Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to this month's book club interview. So today I'm going to be talking to Elizabeth Shane, who is the author of this month's book. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So what's the name of this book of yours?
So my book is called Silhouette of a Songbird.
Fantastic. There we go. Silhouette of a Songbird by Elizabeth Shane. So what's your book about?
It's a collection of poems and prose, and it's written about my experience of childhood sexual abuse. So I write about my journey from childhood through to adulthood. A lot of it is about my feelings, not so much the actual physical trauma that happened to me, although some of it is, but a lot of it is about all the difficulties that I faced through the childhood sexual abuse, all the feelings around it, feelings of shame, feelings of abandonment, feelings of hopelessness, feeling like there's no way out. But also it talks about my strength through it, of never giving up hope and trying to find my voice and know that I've got self-worth. So to empower myself.
Would you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself growing up and what life was like?
Yeah. I think from the outside looking in, we look like a normal family. But from the inside looking out, it wasn't like that at all. So I'm one of 5 children. I'm the youngest. And I had 3 half siblings from my dad's first marriage. I didn't actually even realize I had half siblings, which is really strange, but we were kept very separate. So my sisters, I didn't realize I even had sisters until I was about the age of 6. We're all kept behind closed doors. There was no integration. I didn't realize at the time it was a very dysfunctional family. My dad was extremely controlling. Both my parents were very neglectful, emotionally neglectful. And from the age of about 3 or 4, is when my dad started sexually abusing me. But at the time, I didn't realize that. I didn't really know that until I was much older. And then when he stopped abusing me, my half brother started to abuse me as well. And that continued until I started secondary school. Right. It was a very quiet childhood. It was very lonely, very isolating. You couldn't tell that from me because on one hand, I was a complete chatterbox a lot of the time. I think I used to hide a lot of my fear behind chatting, like non-stop chatter. But on the other times, I was so quiet, you didn't even know I was there. Wow. So it was very difficult.
So how would you say that the abuse has kind of affected you into your adulthood going forward?
It seeped into every aspect of my adulthood, which I actually didn't realize at the time. I grew up no self-worth, absolutely felt like I was a nobody. I felt like I was nothing, that I didn't have any purpose, I didn't have any value to be around. I kept so many of my feelings hidden inside until I was married. So when I got married the first time around, it was like an explosion. It was like Pandora's box opened. And I didn't know at the time that was associated to do with the abuse. I was having really bad flashbacks. It was affecting me intimately. I kept wanting my ex-husband to rape me on a regular basis, and I didn't know why. I felt like that I deserved to be punished. I felt like this horrible person that I needed somebody to abuse me and continue that cycle. And I became a very controlling person. I just felt so overwhelmed by everything. I couldn't cope with anything. And I wanted to control every aspect of my life. I felt such fear if I wasn't in control. And the more controlling I was, the more it would perpetuate the fear and the anxiety. I became very emotionally abusive to my ex-husband as well. And it really affected my self-esteem. I had a very unhealthy body image, became quite promiscuous in places, put myself in some very dicey situations, which could have ended up a lot worse, to be honest. To just put myself in places where I thought, well, I don't care about my body. Let's just go and do whatever I want with it. And developed a very obsessed nature around food, a very unhealthy nature around food, compulsive eating all the time. I just thought, well, I don't really care what I look like. Also, it really affected my mental health. I didn't really know that I had mental health issues until maybe about 5 years ago. So the whole time when I was growing up, I didn't know the word suicide. I didn't even know it existed. And from the age of about 8, I just wanted to die. I just had this urge to just not be around. I didn't want to live. And that went into adulthood. When I was married, I would line up pills, which think, I don't think I can continue. I would self-harm. I tried to slit my wrists. I didn't get to the point where I ended up being in hospital from it, but it was that constant desire to just overdose and not be around. And it can kind of continued. So it also affected my physical health. So now I don't have the best of physical health. I have lots of things wrong with me, but the doctors don't actually know why. They just shrug their shoulders and say, well, we don't really know what's wrong with you. We have something wrong with you, but we don't really know why. So I have lots of unexplained pain. I have lots of problem with my digestive system. I have just lots of physical ailments that don't seem to heal up. I have lots of problems internally, lots of damage inside. And it's, it has affected and impacted every aspect of my life. And I just felt like I didn't deserve to be loved, but at the same time, I was absolutely crying out to be loved. It was just like, please notice me, but don't notice me. And, with my husband now, it's like, to begin with, when we first got together, there was a big part of me that wanted to push him away. I was like, how can you love me if you know what I'm like? You won't actually love me. You'll hate me. So there was a lot of sabotage going on in the relationship. It was like I had a big self-destruct button going, I'm going to press that, keep you away from me. And it was only, I didn't realize that I had experienced trauma. It was just like, really, for me, it was like, oh yeah, I've been abused. It was like reciting lines, it didn't register. And because I couldn't have children naturally, me and my husband decided to adopt. And I had to write about my experience growing up. And I wrote it like it meant nothing. And it was only at the time the social worker wrote back her interpretation of my life and said, Elizabeth has experienced trauma. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that. Why didn't I know that? And that kind of like opened a lid. So again, with everything that I was experiencing, I was trying to contain all this silence and everything that had happened to me. I just didn't want to speak about it. And it got to the point where I had to. We adopted our son, and that was a trigger for me, because becoming a mom and then growing up in my childhood and trying to be a good parent, for me, it felt impossible. And I was getting so many flashbacks when he was a baby, changing his nappy, and I was so terrified at abusing him. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to become my parents. I'm going to become them. And so I went to the police, and that's when I got my diagnosis of PTSD. And that's when I realized I had a lot of work to still do for myself. But yeah, getting there.
Something that you said there, and that was sort of, when you're talking about it, it's just like you're telling a story. But I suppose from your point of view, it's almost, I suppose, a coping strategy within our mind, isn't it? It's kind of that disassociation, to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But when you really kind of get to the crux of what's actually happened, you're not just telling stories of something that happened in your childhood. I suppose it's like opening up Pandora's box, isn't it? In order to be able to digest what's happened, accept what's happened, in order that you can kind of, I suppose, heal yourself.
Yeah.
People just don't realise, do they? What goes on in people's childhood, and the massive effects that kind of takes into people's adult lives.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did that kind of healing process start? I know you sort of said about meeting your partner, having a child and all of that. Would you say that that's where the kind of it hit you in the face, that you needed to do something about this?
Yes, because I just knew that I couldn't carry on parenting my son feeling the way I did, because I would have projected I still do to some extent, all my fears about being abused, I would project on him about him being abused. And I just thought, I'm going to be the one to do it. I had that such overwhelming fear. I thought, I don't want to abuse you, because I was getting very intrusive thoughts. And I just thought, what's wrong with me? That's not normal. I don't feel, normal. It's not something I could speak about. I felt mortified. When I first told my husband, he kind of looked at me like, are you a paedophile? And I felt completely humiliated. And at the time I was in counselling. I've been in and out of counselling for a long time. And they said, actually, that can be quite normal. And I just thought, oh, I didn't know that. It didn't make me feel better, but I'm glad that I had a reason behind why I felt like that. And I just knew, for his sake and for my mental health, I just knew that I had to just kind of like start addressing some of the stuff that happened to me, because otherwise it would just follow me around for my whole life. And I didn't want that for myself. I certainly didn't want that for him. Yeah. So I went to the police and I reported the abuse that happened between me and my brother, because my memories with my dad were so vague and some of them didn't come out until much later that at the time. But I reported, and I have no regrets doing that. It took a long time for me to do it, but I did it, and I knew that I had to, because otherwise I don't think I'd have stayed alive if I'd have kept all of that to myself. I just thought, no, I have to do this. I have to be able to heal, that I'm not in a position where I'm plagued by flashbacks every time I'm changing my son's nappy, and that's when I started to look at other outlets.
Your honesty just shines through. You're just admitting, that you're having these weird thoughts, and that they're not yours. But that must be so helpful to anybody that's perhaps gone through something similar, that might have experienced the same sorts of thoughts. But from such a very young child, they're like little sponges, aren't they, children?
Yeah,
and they pick up all of these things, and it becomes learned behaviour, I suppose, isn't it? But then as we grow, we know the difference between right and wrong. So it's almost dissecting that, isn't it? It's sort of taking it all apart and kind of, I suppose, looking at it and thinking, are these my thoughts, or is this something that's been planted, in my mind to say that this is okay? Yeah. So, it must be like turmoil that kind of goes on in a person's head.
It is. It's like crazy junction.
Yeah. So how, this poetry, this book, kind of, where did that all start? How did you end up?
It's really strange, because before I wrote the book, I'd never read a poem. I'd never written hardly any poetry. And it all kind of like stemmed from my previous counsellor. So at the time when I was seeing her, I was really struggling with my mental health, struggling with the rage, because the rage is like so strong and you don't know what to do with it. There's only so many plates that you can smash, and I was running out of plates. So she just said to me, do you know what? I really think you need to find an outlet. And she's just looked up all these hobbies and said, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? She was like, why don't you do gardening? And I was like, no, I can't do that. I've got a bad back. Why don't you do this? And she said, why don't you join a choir? And I said, are you kidding? No, there's no way I want to join a choir. I can't sing. I don't want to hear me sing. She said, well, I really think you should do it. And she kept going on. I thought, you know what, just to keep her quiet, I'm going to try and join a choir. So I rang up this person who's now my choir teacher. I had to sing Happy Birthday down on the phone. And she said, oh, yeah, come along. So I ended up joining the choir, and I absolutely loved it, because I'd never really sung. I kind of like had to keep quiet as a child, and I didn't dare sing, so I didn't even know if I had a voice. And when I started the choir lessons, she said to me, I really think you would benefit from having vocal coaching. And I thought, why are you trying to tell me something? So I said, okay. So I found this vocal coach who was absolutely lovely. And it was also quite scary, because it's just you and your singing teacher, and you're completely vulnerable, and you're having to open up in a way that you've not done before. And she could see something in my eyes, I don't know what, and she could just see that I had no confidence and completely doubted myself. And she nurtured me to be able to try and find my voice. And when she moved, I thought, oh my God, I really need to still continue this. So I found my 2 singing teachers who I have now, and both helped in different ways. So one teacher suggested that I join a drama group, which for me has been amazing. And the other teacher kept saying to me, I really can see that you're struggling to express yourself, because I was really wooden. I was frightened to move. I still don't really move, but, I was frightened to kind of like get into the feelings of songs, because for me, it felt too difficult. I couldn't relate to it. I thought, all these love songs and stuff, I can't relate to that. And, she said, I think you would benefit from taking drama classes. It's like all these people saying, I think you would benefit from doing this. And I thought, oh, okay. I said, but I hate drama. I absolutely can't bear doing anything like that. But I did. And I found the most amazing drama teacher, who I call my fairy godmother, because she has been like my angel, really, that's sent to me. And she encouraged me to start writing. So from the very first time that I met her, she set me an assignment to kind of like just people watch. And I wrote something about this pizza man, and I read it to her, and she just said, yeah, I think you should continue writing. And at that point, I hadn't written any poems. I was just writing bits and pieces. The day after I buried my dad was when I wrote my first poem. So literally the next day. I had no idea that I could even write poetry. And I brought it to my drama teacher, Lucinda, and I read it to her. And she just, because at that point she had known about my background, I told her, she said, you have to keep writing. You have to keep expressing yourself, because it just felt like, a lid had exploded of all these, memories and stuff. And so that's what I did. I continued writing poetry. I had no intention of ever sharing them, let alone put them in a book. It was not something that even entered my mind. I just kept writing and writing. And then during lockdown, I actually took a break. I didn't write any poems at all. It was like my brain had dried up. I just couldn't write. And then because of lockdown, everything like everybody else was experiencing, the loneliness and the isolation. And at that point, I'd given up my job. So I was working for 12 years part-time in an accounts department. And my boss thought I was having my midlife crisis, turning nearly, I was not quite 50 at that point. And I said to him, I need to find myself. I said, I need to see what else is out there in the world that I can contribute to. I said, so I'm leaving. And he looked shocked. I was like, but I'm going to do it anyway. I might not have an income, but I'm going to do it. And I did. I quit my job a week before the pandemic without realizing that we would have a global pandemic. And I was completely lost at that point. Because all the plans that I had, I was going to join the police force as a volunteer. I was going to volunteer in all these, elderly people's home. I had so many ideas and nothing materialized. And I just had no path. I had no direction. I didn't know who I was. And then when my son returned to school, I really struggled. It was like coming up to the anniversary of my dad's birthday. It was coming up nearer to the anniversary of his death. And I just thought, I can't say anything. I can't say how I feel. I can't talk about that I still have feelings for him, even though he was one of my abusers. I thought, how can I tell anybody that? It just felt so shameful. I felt like if I admitted that I loved him, that I would be no better than him. And that at that time, nobody knew what he had done, but I knew. And I just thought, well, I can't say anything. So I just kept it all hidden. And it felt like I was carrying the biggest anchor ever. I just felt so burdened by it. And I got to the point where my mental health deteriorated so badly that one day I just thought, right, that's it. I'm going to get my pills. I lined them all up. I just thought, no, I can't do this anymore. I just can't carry his shame around with me. I thought, I can't do it. And I put almost like a final plea on Facebook, because normally I just put a load of nonsense on there most of the time, but I just put this message saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm sitting here. I want to overdose. I can't carry their secrets anymore. I'm done carrying their secrets. This is what happened to me. This is what he did. This is what, I don't want to feel that shame anymore. And I had a lot of panic, because obviously people read that message and thought, oh my God. So I had a friend who came banging on the door saying, are you alive? And at that point, I didn't take any pills. I think that for me was my last cry for help. And I went into hiding for like a month, because I wasn't used to revealing so much about myself to the world. It was like, oh my God, what have I done? And I had a lot of support. There was a lot of people who were like, wow, I had no idea, and were really supportive. And then there was the other side where other people were like horrified that I dared speak out, and were trying to shroud me in secrecy and say, you shouldn't say that, think out, and it might affect everybody, and you bring shame upon the family. And they were horrified. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to know. And I blocked those people. And we went on holiday, and that was my saving grace. We went to Devon and Cornwall, which was like my lovely place that I love to go to. And we went to the beach in Cornwall. It was like the most stormiest of days. It was recommended, don't go to the beach because it might be flooded, or it might be a storm. And I thought, let's go to the beach. We're just going to go and do it. So we went along, and my husband and son, they were kind of like just playing in the background. And I stood there. I literally was right by the water's edge. And I stood there, and I could see all the waves were like thrashing around. It was like ferocious. And it just felt like every bit of anger, all my emotions, everything that I'd been to was in the sea and in the waves. And it just felt like the ocean could hear me, it was speaking to me, and it was just saying, I understand what you've been through. You can't die. You have to still be alive. I understand, I recognize, and I acknowledge your pain. And it felt like the first time that I could acknowledge my own pain. It was like all these years that I just dismissed it and just thought, yeah, whatever, it's deserved and everything. I just felt like, actually, I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to tell my story. I'm meant to share this, and I'm meant to share my poems. And then at that point, I thought, I've got to put my poems in a book, and I have to share them with other people to know that they can do this as well. And that's when I put my book together.
Wow, that is so powerful, isn't it? That it's so much, that moment is unbelievable. So this is literally something that's happened to you last year, and between then and now you've got all your poems together, you've published.
Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely unbelievable. What an absolute sort of transformation, in such a short space of time. So, you've gone from singing, drama, your poetry, that's clearly helped you heal some wounds. Why do you think that is?
I think some of it is having that permission to speak, giving that confidence to have a voice. And I mean, I really thank my teachers from the bottom of my heart, because they've inspired me. All of them are very inspirational women. They've all given me a voice. They've all given me a platform to build my confidence. I was one of these people that if you said to me, you need to stand there and sing to 100 people or speak in class, I'd be like, no, I'm the one at the back blended in with the wallpaper. No, I don't think so. But I found it very empowering, to have a voice, to sing solos. I would never dream of singing a solo, and it still terrifies the life out of me. I stand there and my knees are knocking. I think, why am I doing this? And then afterwards, it's like such exhilaration. But yeah, I think for me, it's finding my voice, and I think it's given me the strength and courage to speak out in so many different ways. But it's an outlet for me, because whatever turmoil is going on in my head, I can kind of put that into my writing. I can hopefully put that into my singing and to my drama. And also it's something I really enjoy. And for me, it's been a real healing process. It's really helped with my mental health, because it's very uplifting, to be able to sing is so uplifting. Whether you can sing or not, it doesn't really matter. But just to be able to sing and have that joy, it's really uplifting. And for the drama, absolutely, I love drama. So some of the stuff that we do is improvisation, and it's just hilarious, and it's just so much fun. And I do the drama classes now with my husband, and it's just like a really nice thing to do together. And my drama teacher, Emma, from the very time I met her, she said to me in the class, and this applied to everybody, just be yourself. And I think, all the teachers have inspired that, is to just be yourself and be you, and gave me permission to be me. It didn't matter all the other stuff that came along with it. It was just about being me and accepting me, So I think for me, I would recommend anybody to find if they've got a passion for creative outlets, even if you don't think you can. You'd be surprised what you can't do and then think, wow, I can't believe I did that. So, whatever outlet there is for people, I definitely find it.
As you were saying, it's almost like, we all come into this world with our own gifts and our own talents.
Yeah.
And it feels to me as though your gifts and talents were kind of blocked for a very long period of time. But by you going through what you've gone through, you've the realization that you do have gifts and talents, and clearly you're doing your poetry. Yeah. But isn't it wonderful that you can almost use these experiences that you have gone through that will then help other people.
Yeah.
And yet you can still now become the person that you were meant to be in the first place, the person that you were, the reason you came into this world. Honestly, it's making me feel emotional just listening to you, because you're finally getting to blossom. You're finally finding who you really are, who you were meant to be. And, and here's your book now, full of your poetry, and who knows who that may help. So moving forward then, who would you say that this book is for?
Anybody who's been through trauma. So even if it's, if it's male, the book isn't aimed necessarily for men, because I'm a female, written it from a female perspective. But the abuse, in terms of like the shame, the disassociation, the trauma, and the emotional pain that goes along with it, will be very reflective for men and women. So I feel that for anybody who's been through struggles, who's been through difficulties, who's had to spend a life where they feel like they could have been silenced, anybody who suffers sexual abuse, even as an adult suffering sexual abuse, a lot of the feelings are quite similar. So I feel, for me, the book is aimed for survivors of abuse, but not only for them, but I also feel that people who are maybe partners of people that have been through stuff, and also because a lot of the times they don't understand what they've gone through. And even though you might be able to say, well, you can read this or explain it to them and stuff like that, it's really hard for them to get the intense feelings of shame and the feelings of rage. They just think, oh, you're just this really angry person who's just got, a lot of issues and stuff. I think it's beneficial for them to read, because sometimes it's really difficult for that person to turn around and say to their partner, this is the way I feel, because sometimes they don't know how to express that. They don't know how to say what they feel. Sometimes it's easier to just write it down. So, I gave my husband my poetry book to read, and he did struggle to read it, because for him, he's like, wow, this is really difficult for me to read because of the fact that what you've been through. But he also felt it was important for him to read it. So I think for anybody that's living with somebody who's been through abuse, I think it's important that if they want to read it, then it also might be able to help them have more of understanding, and also for charities to be able to help the clients and survivors that they work with. So that's what I think that it would benefit for.
Fabulous. And how are you and your husband? How do you cope, or how does he cope with everything that you've gone through?
We take it day by day sometimes. We have a lot of humor. So I kind of like have to have the outlet of other stuff as well, because otherwise that's all it becomes about. It encompasses your whole relationship. That's, breathing through it all the time. It's like that's all you're talking about. So we've had to find kind of like other areas of things that we both like, like walking. And for us, it's like, being by the sea, love being by the sea. And also our 8-year-old keeps us very much occupied. So
yeah, fantastic. So kind of, what's your mission? What are you striving to do with your poetry?
For me, it's about having a voice and giving everybody else a platform to be heard. I want other people to feel that they're not alone of what they've gone through. I want them to take comfort from what I've written, for the stuff that I've written, that they might be able to resonate and recognize aspects of what they feel and think, wow, that's how I feel too. So that they feel understood. They don't feel that they're alone. Because that's the awful feeling, is to feel so isolated and lonely from what you've gone through and not have anybody understand. I want them to know that they are understood.
Yeah, fantastic.
And to give them hope, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. I want them to be able to recognize their own self-worth and realize that actually their voice is of value.
Yeah. Wow. So you've kind of launched your book. So what's the sort of next chapter in your life? Where do you see yourself going forward?
I love writing comedy. So I love to write about humorous stuff. Because I have a lot of health issues, and me and my husband get up to all sorts of mischief and mayhem in terms of, he always gets us lost. So no matter where we go, he'll get us lost. And he seems to attract animals that chase him. He loves animals. So no matter where we go, there's always some animal that will chase him, or he'll try and chase the animal. So I love to write about all those different things. I love to write about my everyday kind of like life and the things that I find funny, just different things that pop into my head. I mean, I wrote about a mop. So I like writing about odes to things. And when I just recently had surgery, and I wrote about my experience of surgery from a humorous point of view. And I did offer the surgeon if he wanted to have the poem. So I wrote about that as well. So just different things that I'm passionate about, I love to write about in comedy. So that is the next book that I'm working on, also in poetry form. And I have another poetry book that's my third book that I'm also working on in coincide with that one. And that's, I suppose, I guess the next chapter of my life. So it's about where I'm at now. So I'm still, obviously, there's still problems I'm still struggling with. Yeah. And for me, speaking out about the abuse has had a different reaction from different people. So some people have not responded in a positive way. And it's really about me still trying to find my voice and giving others a platform to have their own voice too. And some of it is about my struggles with my mental health and my PTSD. And a lot of it is about trust as well. And some of it's about anxiety. So I'm still working on it. It's not finished yet.
But, you know, bringing it out into the open and almost that kind of mixture of everything that you've gone through. But if you can almost bring humour, and I know it's not particularly a humorous, topic as such, but if you could almost blend that together, you know, it just makes it so powerful, doesn't it? You know, if somebody's listening, it's just a different kind of audience.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like Elizabeth Shane could be the new Victoria Wood, you know. You'll be up there doing your singing with your poetry and, you know, and making people laugh, you know. Who knows what the future will bring.
Singing poems, that's a new one. I've not heard of that.
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody that may have gone through something similar as yourself, that might be in their 30s, 40s and has never spoken up? Kind of, what would you say to them?
Although I'm not qualified to give advice, I do feel that in terms of speaking out, it's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't. I mean, I never wanted to speak out. I had never planned on speaking out. I didn't speak out until my late 40s. I kept it quiet for so long, but I'd reached a point where being in silence was suffocating and I had to do it for my own mental health. I think you've got to take things at your own pace because everybody's experience is individual to them. They have to do what feels right for them. But I think for me, I would recommend if you don't have a close friend that you feel you can trust, that you can speak to, there are some amazing charities out there for survivors that will hear you and they will listen and they will validate what you're saying and believe you. And I think for me, I probably didn't know about all these charities that existed when I was coming out. And I think there is that for them, you know, and I think to take advantage of that, because they will listen to what you're going through and you won't be alone in what you're telling them. They won't be horrified in what you're telling them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me, speaking out was the best thing that I could have done. It might not be like that for everybody else. Some people might never choose to speak out and that has to be okay for them too. But I think it's out there. So if they want to, there are people, I believe you. I know there will be loads of other people who will believe what you're going through and, you know, will hold that, you know, that safety and also be kind to yourself. It's really difficult. Finding compassion for yourself is really difficult. I mean, I struggle with that and it's taken a long time for me to even get to that point. It's really hard. So when you speak out, it is going to generate a lot of different emotions in somebody. And I think, you know, you need to take time to look after yourself and self-care is really important.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that we get some of those links for help and support below your video and your book and what have you. So where can people find you? How can they buy your book?
So my book is available on Amazon, and it's also, if you type in the name of my book or my name, I seem to pop up all over Google now. So it's available at lots of different online book sites. I'm also available on LinkedIn, and I now have a Twitter account and an Instagram account. I still don't know how to use them, but I have them. So apparently I'm on there. I'm not quite sure what to do with them at the moment, but
okay. Well, again, we'll make sure the links and everything for people to be able to get hold of you and your book will be below.
Yes, because I would love to hear from other survivors in terms of how the book's helped them. If it's helped them, it might not, but if it has, I would like to be, because for me, it draws a lot of strength for me to be able to know that I can make a difference for somebody else. And, you know, and they may be even inspired to write their own poems, you know, and write their own stuff. So creative self-expression is very healing.
Fantastic. Elizabeth, thank you so much. I could sit and listen to you all day. I don't want this call to end, but and thank you for your bravery and your absolute honesty, you know, in sharing your innermost feelings. And I'll certainly be getting a copy. And it's incredible what you're doing and how you've, you know, like you've had to be 40 something for almost that healing process to start. So that's so inspirational for others that might have gone through something similar, that still haven't kind of opened up that can of worms or Pandora's box, whatever you want to call it. But just listening to you today, I just hope that gives other people courage to be able to say, do you know, enough's enough. I'm ready to speak out, or I'm ready to overcome this, whatever that means for them. And just giving themselves that time. So thank you. I really do appreciate you giving up your time today to talk about your book. But thank you. Thank you.